right, it looks like we should be heading out to this live. Let's see, there we go. Absolutely fantastic. All right, it is 2:57 Pacific Standard Time. So I'm going to give it another minute or two. I'm going to be going back and forth between the Zoom screen in real time and the 5 or 6 second delay that I see in YouTube. And just kind of give you guys a background. If you're new to Mañana No Mas, if you're new to some of the training that I do online, and this one, just to be clear, this is a no charge book review / mastermind of the 5 Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell's. So right up front, let me just throw all the disclaimers out before we actually get started at 3 o'clock. But I've been part of the John Maxwell team since 2016. As I was transitioning from a corporate position at Ducati North America as the North American training manager. That's a motorcycle brand for folks that aren't into power sports. As I was the training manager at that company, that corporation, I was intending to go out on my own and be, an independent trainer, coach, speaker, things like that. And I got recruited by Suzuki as I was leaving Ducati. So when I went to the John Maxwell certification course in August of 2016, I was well prepared. I'd read the books. I had done the online curriculum before going to the week-long event. But when I spent the time there, it was, how am I going to use these skills in a corporate environment? And I worked really, really hard at leveraging some of the John Maxwell philosophies into a corporate environment, especially one that was so socially and fiscally conservative as Suzuki is. Suzuki Motor of America is a subsidiary. It's held by Suzuki Motor Corporation out of Japan. And so when you make a decision with that many levels of management, it really does take some of the work that's described in the 360-degree leader, another book by John C. Maxwell. It takes a lot of those talents that come in that 360-degree leadership role. So you have to, you lead up, lead down, lead across. Most recently, as far as John Maxwell material went, I led a book review on leadership. Leadership is a book that John put out recently, and it deals with the quick changing environment of being a leader in today's society, in today's leadership environment. So we went through that book in its entirety. I believe it was 12 sessions. And again, it was a no charge deal. The full course, if you want to review it, is in the Mañana No Mas Academy. There'll be links in this YouTube link when I republish that. But if you go to mañananomas.com, that's kind of like a magazine style website, lots of content in there. When you go to the top, you'll see Academy. And in the Academy, you can look at courses. One of the courses is called Leadership. That is a course I offer at no fee, no charge. And you come on in and everything's organized in there, and content's a little bit dripped so that you get the learning breaks in between the sessions to kind of take pace with it. During that study, I had mentioned the 5 levels of leadership, and I promised that I would cover the 5 levels of leadership at that time. And so I wanted to make sure that I knocked that out for you. It is top of the hour. It is 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So I want to jump into this, and I want to value your time. Please note that I'm also hosting this whole session is live both on YouTube, where you can use the comment section and things like that to comment. And I should be able to see those. I should get notifications that comments are being posted. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, as the live is happening on YouTube, you'll be able to interact within that environment. I was hosting on Facebook, doing Facebook Lives inside the Mañana No Mas Facebook group. But if I were to be honest with you, it seemed like there were some gaps as far as the reliability of the Facebook system went. Some weeks it was great, some weeks it wasn't. In fact, I did a Facebook Live yesterday where the whole video just kind of turned into a fuzzy green, right? So you could hear me, but you couldn't see me. And I found that when Facebook had its reliability issues and I moved things over to YouTube, I found that things were more secure, more reliable. And so I know that this is hard. I know it's a big ask. I don't know why this is so hard, but if you're following me on the Mañana No Mas Facebook page, I'm going to highly suggest, beg, plead, whatever it takes. I need to get you guys over to subscribe on the Mañana No Mas YouTube channel. I've been building playlists inside the Mañana No Mas channel in YouTube so that when you go there and you see hundreds of videos, you know, you don't become overwhelmed, because one's about motorcycles, one's about mountain biking, one's about running a Spartan race, one's about reading a John Maxwell book. It's like, whoa, 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 right? That's too much going on. Let me turn this off. And there's just too much going on, right? And so by utilizing the playlists, I'm able to segment things in a way that makes sense for what you might be looking for. Or if you're looking for content that I covered once about some mountain bike ride that I did as far as one of my fitness segments goes, well, then you can look in there and you go, okay, well, here it is, you know, boom. Playlists make it easy. Now, some videos are in more than one playlist, but I wanted to make it easy for you to find the material that you were looking for rather than having to sift, you know, through a bunch of stuff to get there. So again, I'll be going back and forth between the two. I will periodically check in on the YouTube page just to make sure I'm not missing any comments that might pop up. But I want to also go back to the Zoom. Oh, there's Michelle. See, this is exactly why I'm going to the Zoom. I want to make sure that people have the ability to sign in and join the live conversation. And so now we've got Michelle signing in. Hi, Michelle. How are you? You're on mute. Let me unmute you. I will. There you go. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad we practiced early.
I think your microphone is turned off, sweetheart.
Oh.
But Michelle joins us. She is part of the Mañana No Mas Academy system. She's one of the students in there. She's also a very valuable coworker that I had at Suzuki. And as far as graphics go, Michelle was phenomenal. I would think it, I would say it, and she would make it reality. And when you are graphically illiterate, such as I am, it is fantastic to have somebody with that skill set jump on board. And hang on a sec, Michelle, let me bring you back up. Try saying something now, Michelle.
Something, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can barely hear you.
Huh. We had the settings that's still set on.
No, it's good. I have the volume down on my end too, because the YouTube comes over it.
Okay.
So if you want to kick in verbally, you want to look in at, let me see where that's at. Do you have a thing on your thing that says raise your hand or something like that?
Chat, participant.
Polls or chat, I think yeah. Chat or reactions. You could do a reaction.
Okay. All right, I'll do that.
That'll get my attention.
Okay. Thanks, Kurt.
All right. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
That's fantastic.
I have my my lunch too, my late lunch. I'll be eating a tuna salad.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump into the book. We'll get started.
All right.
And Michelle, just so you know, I'm going back and forth. I just explained to other folks that might be chimed in on the YouTube channel, because this is being broadcast on YouTube Live as well. So I'm bouncing back and forth between YouTube and Zoom, just to make sure I don't miss people or miss comments or things like that.
Okay.
Okay. Good. I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit because I'm getting a little feedback. But folks, the 5 levels of leadership. Again, I started to talk about why I was covering the book. I'm covering it because when we went through leadership, I wanted to make sure that I touched the subject good. And leadership talked about all kinds of things, right? It talked about the quickness of making a decision, what it's like to be a leader, you know, price over perks, right? It talked about all kinds of development as far as being a leader. And then near kind of like the first third of the book, it made a mention of the 5 levels of leadership. And about 60%, 70% of the way through the book, it made another statement, a bigger statement, a review about the 5 levels of leadership. And it was during that time that I said, hey, you know what, you know, as an audience that might be chiming into this, I want to make sure that I follow up and I cover the 5 levels of leadership with everybody so that we could, you know, everyone would be on the same page. Now, there's going to be times when I'm talking today and you're going to say to yourself, oh, I know that dude, or I worked with that guy, or I used to work for a lady that was just like that, or Boy, I missed that boss. He was a really great boss. Or, you know, that person, that's the reason I left that company, right? Um, remember, most people don't leave companies, they leave people. Most people, when they voluntarily leave, they're not leaving because they hate the job. You know, in most cases, they pursued the job because they thought it was something they wanted to do, right? So if they voluntarily leave the position, what caused them to leave? And when you do a root cause analysis of, you know, relationships and what was the straw that broke the camel's back, it generally turns into a discussion about how they left the person. They didn't like who they were working for rather than what they were working to do. And so if you take a look at that from a realistic standpoint and you look at the amount of turnover, maybe corporately speaking, you know, in your environment, you would say, okay, so, you know, if you're the leader, you're thinking to yourself, I got some work to do, right? If you're not the leader, people say to me often, especially when I talk about leadership so much, they'll say, I'm not the leader, why is this important? Or I'm not in charge, so this doesn't apply to me. Or I'm not the boss, so this isn't my thing. And this is exactly why you need to be in the 5 levels of leadership, because authority isn't by position only, right? There's a phrase called positional authority. I use it a lot. I'll say, oh, well, you need to establish positional authority with A, B, and C. That'll be when I am working with up and coming leaders and I'm talking about how to leverage their position for power that becomes influence, that over time becomes relationship that moves things up the ladder, right? If you're not a leader and you're in here or you're watching the video in replay and you're going, this doesn't even apply to me, I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to implore you not to turn it off. Everybody, every human being is called to be separate. Every human being is called to be special. Every human being has something of value that they can offer to another group of human beings. And once you acknowledge or recognize that you are special, you do have value, and you can add value to others, that adding value becomes influence. And as we've studied in other books by John Maxwell, we know that leadership is influence, nothing less, nothing more. So if you take those definitions, then you start to realize, okay, I have the potential to be a leader. That might not be a position I hold as management. It might be a position I hold in my women's group, a Bible study, you know, a hiking group up in the woods. I mean, there's a bazillion opportunities where you're interacting with other people and you have the ability through influence to assume a leadership role, whether it's official by title or not. And so one of the reasons I love the 5 levels of leadership is it helps people develop their leadership abilities, or to consciously think about their leadership abilities as they interact with other people, regardless of the position they're in, right? And hopefully, you know, when I say things like that, it makes, you know, complete sense. Just as another shout out, folks that are coming in late, if you are watching on the YouTube live, don't be afraid to use the chat button. If I say something that sounds weird, or you want clarification, or you have a comment, don't hesitate to use the chat that's on the right side of your screen. If you've maximized, you know, your video, you might need to find the other menu to get to the chat. But if you keep YouTube minimized, chat's right on the right-hand side of the screen. And then Michelle so far is the only person in Zoom, but periodically we may see her jump up with waving a hand or waving at me through the screen, and at what point I'll alter audio so I can have a conversation. As we go into the 5 levels of leadership by John Maxwell, right out of the beginning, it says, this book is dedicated to Equip, talks about his company Equip, and all the people who are part of this leadership organization. Equip's rule of 5, right? And here's John starting out, first page, not even into the content yet. And he says, 1, think globally, right? Think globally. 2, evaluate our leadership strategy. People hear me talk about this a lot. Who's in charge? Why are they in charge? What direction are they going in? These are hugely important questions in any size organization. Evaluate the leadership strategy. 3, create resources. I work in the training industry. Michelle works in the training industry. Other people that are signing into this or watching the replay are going to say, oh, I'm always looking for resources, or, you know, where can I find the resources to get better at this? Or where can I find the instructions or the book or the website, right? We've all been down this road before. So you need to create resources. Number 4, develop associate trainers, partners, and donors. Here I am in my 50s, and this is something that I am just barely getting a hold of right now. I'm beginning to recognize I can't do all these things myself, right? Tony Robbins is not just Tony Robbins. Dean Graziani is not just Dean Graziani. You know, I take a look at even people like Dave Gambrell doing the digital marketplace. It's not just Dave Gambrell. These people have built communities, and they have people that come alongside of them, that help them, that groom them, that help moderate their groups, things like that, right? And so he says here, develop associate trainers, partners, and donors. So in a very real way, you know, I'm associated with Perfect Match Hire, right, with Rod Tillery. So I work with companies and I try and help them grow their team, right? And as they're growing their team, they may have to hire or may have to fire some people to make sure that they get the right team balance. And by me partnering with Rod, we're able to scientifically match people to a job. We're able to go through all of the applications and all of the hiring process and whittle it down scientifically to make sure we got the right person in the right spot at the right time. That is the craziest looking dog swimming around with the fishes.
Oh, you see my dog? That's Elsa.
And then the last thing, 5, says train leaders to train leaders. Now, training leaders to train leaders is the 5th level of leadership. So, you know, we're going to go through this book. It's going to take multiple sessions, but I wanted to lay that out for you right from the get-go. When we get past the table of contents and we get into the first part of the book, I'm on page 1 here, and it goes right into leadership is one of my passions. So is teaching it. I've dedicated more than 30 years of my life to helping others learn what I know about leading. In fact, I spend about 80 days every year teaching leadership. And in the last several years, I've taught it on 6 continents. So when we are leveraging material from John C. Maxwell, it's not some dude that woke up, you know, in March and thought, wow, I think I'll publish a book in September, right? This is a guy that's got time and service. This is a guy that's worked small churches, big organizations, and is now meeting with and mentoring world leaders on a world stage, you know, countries around the globe. So super, super pleased to be able to bring that to you. It was as early as 1976 that John started his leadership journey working at a small church. A thing that I highlighted on page 2 here says, some people identify leadership with obtaining a leadership position. And this is what I started to talk about earlier. It says, but I've known bad leaders who had good positions and good leaders who had no position at all, right? And then he asked the question, haven't you, right? So as we begin to talk about these 5 levels of leadership, I'm going to repeat myself because I want to make sure I make this absolutely clear. This course, this mastermind, this conversation is not about applying for a job and getting a job as the manager of whatever department or the manager of anything. This is all about internal leadership. This is about you developing yourself to have influence over a group, right? So some people identify leadership with obtaining a leadership position, but I've known bad leaders who have had good positions and good leaders who have had no position at all. Haven't you? I can think very recently, I had to work with somebody who was in management, pretty high up in management, and he was very positionally oriented. He worked at a socially conservative company. He was very positionally oriented, and people around him, and he liked or seemed to like the idea that he had the power. He had the power. You work for him, you work in his department, he has the power. And what I found so interesting was after I didn't work there anymore, I had the opportunity to meet with him, actually shared a drink with him, right, at a restaurant. And I was so amazed at the humanity, at the human qualities this person exhibited one-on-one in a friendly conversation. Now, I don't know if that's because I didn't work there anymore and the positional part of the positional authority had vacated. I'm not sure what that was, but it was a really good example of I've known bad leaders who had good positions, right? Some people just can't handle the responsibility of being in charge. Some people aren't sure what to do to build relationship, rapport, and leverage influence to make things happen. They think they have to tell you what to do. And a good leader doesn't have to tell you what to do. you figure out what to do, right? And if you've worked for a really good leader before, you know what that feels like. And then hopefully you can think that through backwards and you can relay that same kind of relationship to somebody else, right? If you've had it exhibited to you, you should be able to duplicate it and push it forward, right? That's something to think about. It says, can you learn practical leadership tools? And that starts on page 3 if you're following along in the book. It says, can you learn practical leadership tools? And the answer to that is obviously yes, right? Any facet of leadership can be taught. It can be learned. It can be developed over time. So again, I'm going to come to folks and I'm going to say, you might be listening to this. You may have chimed in and here we are 15 minutes into the talk and you're going, this ain't me. This ain't me. I'm not a leader. This ain't me. This is you, right? Leadership can be taught. It can be learned. It can be developed over time. And even if you're an introvert, people will say, well, I'm introverted, so I'm meant to be a follower. That is a lie, straight from the pit of hell, coming straight to you to tell you that you're not something that you could be. Whether you're introverted, extroverted, what your energy level is, your energy level's high, your energy level's low, that doesn't matter. What matters is, how do you build rapport and influence with others? And then how do you rely on that rapport and that influence to move forward with an agenda, to move forward with a goal? And so that's what this is about. It says the 5 levels of leadership provides a clear picture of leadership. And then it breaks it down starting on page 4. It says leadership defines leading as a verb, not a noun, right? So if you lead, that's the verb. You lead, right? If I am a leader, that's the noun, right? So we want to stress that leadership takes action. It takes activity. If you think about the study we did in leadership, we talked about perks to price, right? It said, you know, you can enjoy the perks of being a leader, but you got to do the work to be there, right? It takes action. You can't just assume it and then have it be real. You have to put the work in. So John writes here that leadership is a process and not a position. He talks about the difference between leadership and management. I like talking about the difference between leadership and management because I've had a lot of management jobs. And when I go in as the manager with the title, I begin to take a leadership role. And in a lot of cases, that leadership role really isn't all that welcome, because what was upper management really looking for when they hired a manager? Well, a manager is great at keeping things the same. A manager is great at keeping status quo. A manager is great at filling in the gaps when somebody drops out, right? So a manager can maintain. That's what managing is, right? So it's almost like not going backwards as fast as it could have gone backwards. That's almost like what managing is. Leadership is different. Leadership's that noun where you pour yourself in and you get creative and you think of ways to move forward. You're not trying to maintain status quo. You're trying to move up, right? You're trying to be more productive. You're trying to raise margins. You're trying to add value to more people. It's always a game of addition rather than, you know, multiplying by 0, right? We don't want to multiply by 0. So some really, really good managers are horrible leaders. And some really good leaders are horrible managers, right? It depends on kind of how their internal wiring is done, right? But some leaders have their eyes so far on the future that they do a bad job of managing status quo, and they can actually begin to let the foundation crumble a little bit. A good leader needs to manage the foundation, but still see the future as an upward slope, right? So it takes a lot of energy, a lot of things moving on. That's kind of that leadership dance we talked about in leadership. It says, leadership deals with people and their dynamics, which are constantly changing, right? And so a manager will say things with pride, like they're proud about it. They'll say, well, I treat everybody on my team the same. I'm fair. I treat everybody the same, right? I don't have any favoritism. I treat everybody the same. That's a manager. A leader is like, I treat so-and-so this way because they have a creative personality type. I treat so-and-so this way because they are a data-driven, you know, analyst type personality type. I treat this person like this because, you know, they're nuts. But whatever the answer is, it's like a leader knows their people and they know the energy level and they know what they can move forward with at any given time, which takes relationship, right? It says the 5 levels of leadership breaks down leading into understandable steps. The 5 levels of leadership provides a clear game plan for leadership development. And it says the 5 levels of leadership aligns leadership practices, principles, and values. So I think a disclaimer I need to insert here as we go into this subject deeper is I will give you information. I will share with you communication styles. I will share with you maybe excerpts of dialogue that I may have used with people in the past, right? If you misuse that knowledge and it comes out as some form of manipulation or comes out as something that's unethical in your practice, that's not the intention, right? The intention is to always operate at a high level of value, highest level of integrity. It's not about manipulating people. It's about having a relationship with people where they want to join. They want to be on your team. They want to work with you. You're not manipulating people to cheat them out of time and money. You're leading people so that you can affect them in a positive way. So I want to make sure that I hit that with that disclaimer real quick out of page 5. As we jump over, and I do this sometimes, I flip the book over for you. As you look here, he goes right into it. He says, starting at the bottom, positional authority is level 1. Permission is level 2. Production is level 3. People development is number 4. And then the pinnacle of leadership, that's number 5, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's what I like about reading books from John. John doesn't hold the secrets back, right? It's not like watching one of these shows on Fox Network where it gets to the last 3 minutes of the TV show and it's like it ends and nothing's wrapped up, right? There's a dead body over here. There's some girl over here. There's some guy. There's cards. There's and you're going, what's happening? And then, well, tune in next week to find out. John doesn't write that way. John says, here's everything I'm going to teach you in this book right here on page 6. Here you go. This is it. And then he takes the rest of the book to really extrapolate the concepts and get you to a point where you begin to understand and process and put to practice the things that he's teaching. And I'll tell you firsthand, for me to be able to, employ these practices in a corporate arena, it's been really eye-opening. I've become pretty productive in a crowd, which is kind of fun to do. So let's go right into it. Let's go start out with the first level, which is positional authority, right? Positional authority is you have the ability to tell somebody what to do because somebody made you the boss, right? So that's positional authority. It's also the lowest level of leadership. If someone makes you a manager, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad leader. They're giving you a chance. They're giving you a chance to lead, right? But you get the authority with the position. You don't necessarily get the productivity with the position, right? If I take a new position at a big company as a manager, and I grab everybody, I put them all in a room, and I go, "Hi, I'm Kurt. I'm your new boss. There's going to be some changes around here. First thing we need to do is I need you to do this, you to do this, and you to do that," right? I might get their hands, as in I might get their commitment to get something done. They might offer me their hands to perform labor, but I haven't got their heart yet. And if I don't have their heart, I'm not going to get full productivity out of them. I'm not going to get work that's indicative of, hey man, I'm sold out to this. Like I see the vision and I want to be a part of this. This is freaking awesome, right? A higher level leader has the ability to grow the relationship, to attach himself to the heart first, and then lay out the vision, ask for some input back and say, how do you guys think we could tweak this vision to make it better? How can we make it bigger? How can we go past what I just said, right? Get everybody's feedback and then move forward, get everybody's buy-in, right? And that's talking about that's level 3, that's level 4 type leadership. But right now we're talking about positional authority. So positional authority means good news. You got the job. You're starting at the bottom, and now you got to figure out how to lead. It says nothing's wrong with having a leadership position. Everything is wrong with using the position to get people to follow you, right? Hopefully that makes sense. I described that a little earlier with the guy I ended up having a drink with. That was an example of he was using his position to make people do things. He wasn't embedding himself with people because of his position, right? That's a totally different thing. So nothing's wrong with having a leadership position, but everything is wrong with using the position to get people to follow. Position is a poor substitute for influence. Influence is always the key that you want. Remember John's famous quote, and I'll say it a million times before I die, is, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? So level 2 is based entirely on relationships. So it breaks out and it says, level 2 is where you get the relationship with the person, that you basically have their permission to kind of instruct them or give them things to do, right? If you're the boss, you have the right to do it because you're the boss. Permission, the definition of the permission level is, I built enough of a relationship that I can ask you to do something and know that you're going to do it because you kind of want to do it. You kind of want to be on the team, right? Level 3 is production. Now, production is a slippery slope, and one of the hardest levels to make the transition between is level 2 to level 3, okay? Level 3 is, it says, one of the dangers of getting to the permission level is that a leader stop there, but good just don't create a pleasant working environment. They get things done. Now, I think it's funny that he writes "get things done," and the catchphrase to Mañana no Más is "getting it done yet." Right? I am so fired up about getting things done. I'm manic about checking things off, making sure projects get handled, making sure projects get done. Michelle will give me a nod to the affirmative. She knows how happy I get when something gets handled. And so when you get something done, it's super awesome, right? So it says many positive things begin happening when leaders go to level 3. Work gets done, morale improves, profits go up, turnover goes down, goals are achieved, right? It's also on level 3 that momentum kicks in. Momentum is one of the laws in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Momentum comes up near the end of that book, right? Because there's so many steps on growing the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership that by the time you get, up to like 16, 17, 18, you get into things that start to multiply on each other. And momentum is one of those things. Think about, you're watching a football game, you're watching the Super Bowl, and one team's ahead by 21 points. And they go to the halftime, they come back from halftime, and all of a sudden, the team that was behind gets a field goal, right? Then they get a touchdown, then they get a field goal. And the crowd starts chanting different things and everybody's getting excited. And you'll hear the announcers say something like, this is a real shame for so-and-so. It seems like the momentum has shifted, right? And that's because there is almost a supernatural strength in the idea of momentum, right? If we think about what Einstein said, right? He said, momentum, energy, right? An object in motion tends to stay in motion. So momentum's huge. If you can get momentum on your side and you can push that and elevate it, you become a force to be reckoned with. And that's kind of what comes after permission level, right? After permission level comes production level. And that's when things really start to soar through the roof. Now, that'll take us to level 4. Think about this. If I had a positional authority level, and then I got people's permission to lead them, people actually want to be on my team, right? Then I give them some more work and things are getting productive. We have momentum. Things are moving forward. This is awesome. Now, this is where a lot of leaders quit. This is where a lot of leaders, they think, I got it, I'm done. And they'll hang out there at that level and they'll become the manager that I just talked smack about 5 minutes ago because they'll maintain this. But if you're a leader, where do you want to go? You want to go up, right? So I've got the position, I've got their permission, I get production at a high level, margins are great, we're making money, everything's awesome. The next thing, level 4, is people development. I'm not a great leader unless I bring other people alongside of me and make them leaders. So super important. If I lead the most awesome division, the most awesome department at any major company, let's say Apple Computers hires me and I develop some new online tool and we are just awesome and we become the most awesome financial silo that Apple products has and we're kicking butt, but I'm 52 years old and I stay at the production level for the next 10 years. And then I go to the offices at Apple and I go, you know what? I put in my time. It's time for me to retire. It's been a great run. See ya. I'm out. Well, what happens to that division? What happens to that department if I have failed to build any leaders beneath me to step into those shoes, right? Not only that, but think about a company in the tech space like Apple, right? I need to be able not only to build a leader to fill my shoes, but I should feel responsible to build leaders that are able to break into their own silos and build their own departments and make their own levels of financial accountability, right? So a level 4 leader is someone that develops other leaders, okay? Now, there's something that's super, super interesting about all these levels, and it comes up later in the book, but I want to say it right now. All of this happens, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of energy to get level 1, level 2. From level 2 to level 3 is huge. Once you start knocking down some production milestones, things go kind of crazy. Oh, there you go. Took a technical writing class. I remember that. And then you get to production and you get to people development. It takes me forever to build this. I can lose this like that. You can do all the right things, building your career up or building your influence up, but it only takes 1 or 2 mistakes to knock you down a few pegs where you got to start back over. And remember that if you build your, let's say, take the example I used from Apple, right? Let's say I'm at Apple, I build this giant silo, it's hugely productive, hugely profitable, and then Google recruits me. Well, when I go to Google, if I leave Apple and I go to Google and I walk into Google cold, how is that team going to respond to me? Is that team going to respond to me like, oh, all hail King Curtis here from Apple? You know, no, that's not going to happen. You know, it's going to be, I'll be right back at the leadership level, right? Right back at the positional leadership, right? I'm the new manager on the block, and I'll have to work hard to establish relationships with that team and then get permission from that team and then build that team into a production level mindset, right? And then work on building leaders within that group to help there. So every time you move or you change your environment, you start over again. And it's not unusual to go up or go down, right? Now, the reason I bring this up now, as we get into the book and we start to break these subjects out and really start to discuss them, is I don't want you to be discouraged. The more you do it, the easier it gets, right? The more you experience building a team, the easier it gets to build the next team. The more experience you get bringing up a leader to take your shoes, the easier it is to bring up additional leaders to take your shoes. So it's one of those things where, and I feel driven, maybe this is a little too transparent this early in the talk, but I super feel driven to build leaders wherever I go. I'm volunteering at a church right now, working with young adults. And one of the first things I said was, hey, I'm going to offer you guys some leadership training if you want it. You know, there's 15 people here. I'd love to see 4 or 5 people stand up as leaders to be able to lead different segments of church, right? On the serving teams, things like that. I'm super driven by this. When I was at Suzuki, I was employed there, but I had people that I had influence with that I convinced to take classes. Like Michelle said, she took a technical writing class. We had another gentleman, I sent him off to leadership classes. Horribly introverted gentleman. He said, I don't think this is for me. I said, you know what, just go, right? It's covered. It doesn't cost you anything. And you'll come out of this thing with some communication skills that even if you don't become the leader when I leave, you'll have communication skills that'll help you with the next guy that comes in, right? And so to me, I think that's kind of a huge, huge thing. Now, the last level of leadership is something that there are people that have said I've gotten there. And I will tell you, there are times when I think maybe I'm close, but I don't think I'm really quite there yet. And that is the pinnacle level of leadership. If we were talking and I said, this is the position, this is where I got permission, this is how I built productivity, and this is how I started to build leaders. When I get the pinnacle, what do you think the pinnacle of leadership would be? Just take just a minute or so and think, like, what would be the pinnacle? If I had the position, and then I got permission, and then I got productive, and then I helped build leaders, the pinnacle is when you actually put yourself in a position, and I want to make sure I say it clear enough because this is huge. When you put yourself in a position where you not only build leaders, but you build leaders that are committed to building leaders, right? So it's not enough for me to build someone up that they can take my shoes. I need to build someone up so that they can take my shoes and then go build 3 or 4 more leaders to expand the concepts that I've left them with, right? So a pinnacle leader is somebody that's just off the charts with influence, and people hang on. Once someone gets to the pinnacle leader of leadership, pinnacle level of leadership, everything I just described about, hey, going from Apple to Google, right? It is possible that you could have so much influence at that position at Apple that to take the position at Google, you would walk in warmed up, ready to go, and already be at a productive level of influence just walking in, because your reputation will precede you, if that makes sense. I will tell you that I thought when I went from Ducati to Suzuki that it was going to be a real easy transition, right? I'll tell you, this is a mistake I made in my leadership journey. I had a real successful program at Ducati. I was recruited by Suzuki, and I made this assumption that, hey, I'm going to move my family 500 miles south. I'm going to walk in. I'm going to turn this place upside down. It's going to be great. Well, I walked in. I had my first meeting with my employees, to which 2 of them basically couldn't stand me, and they left the room, right? It did not go as well as I had expected. And that's because I had made the mistake of thinking that I was a level 4 leader coming in a level 3 position, and I wasn't. I might have been a level 3, maybe a low level 4 leader, and I was coming in at a level 1 position. And so you need to really take stock of where you're at. And part of the exercise in going through this content, and I may put a fillable link into the Mañana No Mas Academy to accompany this, is that there's some work that we do through this book where you evaluate yourself as a leader, and then you have other people evaluate you as a leader, which is really kind of interesting. You might make assumptions and think you're here and then find out you're here. But here's what I found with a lot of folks that I work with. A lot of people that I work with or I consult with, especially at the power sports dealership level, they assume they're here in their leadership journey. And when I get feedback from third parties, I find out they're really up here, right? It's kind of a human nature thing to sometimes be a little more critical of yourself than you really deserve, right? And so a lot of folks have this, especially in different arenas. There's certain niches in business where that's super, super common, or there's certain cultures where people will assume they're at a lower level than they really are. And then once you work with them and you expose them higher level of leadership, they tend to produce at a much higher rate, right? Because there's a certain level of confidence that comes with that influence. So hopefully I'm not mixing up all these words too much and I'm making myself super, super clear. I'm gonna jump over to, oh, we're still looking good. All right. When we get to the insight into the 5 levels of leadership that starts on page 11, it says you can move up a level. You can never leave the previous one behind. That's important. We just went through all the levels, right? You have the position, you have the production, you're creating leaders, then you're creating leaders that create leaders, okay? You're working your way up. As you work your way up these levels, at no point can you discount the level underneath you. So when I become a leader that has my team's permission to lead them, I still hold the position of manager. I still have that positional authority, right? If I become a productive leader that increases production and creativity and gets my team really kicking butt, well, I still have the position and I still have the responsibility to maintain the relationship while I'm building production. And when I pick somebody to make a leader out of them, right, I still have the rest of the team to worry about with production. I still have relationships to build all with the rest of the team, and I still position and getting my core job done. So at no point as I go up the ladder, am I leaving any one of the rungs unattended, right? So as you grow, you always have to add, not transfer. If that makes sense. It says here, if you do level 2 correctly, you never need to rely on your position again. I like this one. It says, and I'll read more context. If you start out with the leadership position and you build relationships with the people you oversee, do you resign your position to do so? No. You leave your position to advance, but if you win level 2 correctly, meaning if you build relationships correctly, you never need to rely on your position again, right? Once you have a team that likes you, that you have good influence with, that wants to be on your team, you don't have to remind them anymore that you're the boss and they got to get it done, because they just want to get it done. They want to be part of your team. They want to be productive, right? So the idea here is if you build your team properly, you won't have to rely on the position once you get to level 2 leadership. It says here, the higher you go, the easier it is to lead, right? That's true. That's 100% true. Think about it, if I have the position, but people don't like me, right? Trying to have influence and get them to exercise certain tasks or to get things done is like pulling teeth, right? It's like telling your 12-year-old to take out the trash while he's playing video games. He doesn't want to get off playing video games and take out the trash. You have to tell him 5 or 6 times. You're finally going to have to raise your voice, and then he's going to throw a fit. He's going to throw the game controller and slam the door, because that's what it's like raising kids. Well, managing a team really isn't that much different, right? If I just have positional authority and I don't have a relationship with these people, they're not going to want to do the things I tell them to do. That's just human nature. So the higher I go up through this leadership levels, the easier it is to lead those people, because I have more buy-in, more relationship, right? It says the higher you go, the more time and commitment is required to win a level. Again, that's 100% true in my experience. If I want to just be the manager, just have the position, well, then I can show up 5 minutes late after my shift. I can leave 5 minutes early. I can take a long lunch. I already got the job. I'm already in control. Who cares, right? But if I want to win my people over, I'm going to come in a little early. I'm going to, take a normal lunch. I'm going to stay a little late. I'm going to make myself available to my team when they have questions. I'm going to make sure that, that they feel that they can approach me about things. And that's going to take time. That's going to take energy on my part, right? So it says the higher you go, the more time and commitment is required to win the levels. Absolutely true. But remember the law that we just talked about before that. The higher up the levels you go, the easier it is to lead. So it's kind of a trade. Takes a little time, takes a little commitment, but in the end, it makes things super, super easy, right? It's kind of like a car loan, right? So let's say you have a car loan, you're paying $300 a month for a car, and it's a 4-year loan, right? But instead, you start paying $400 a month, and you pay the thing off 14 months early. It took you a little more effort to pay the car off, took a little more commitment to pay the car off, but once you paid the car off, how easy was it to keep the car when you didn't have to worry about making payments anymore, right? So it's like that. It's like it takes the commitment, it takes the time, but the reward at the end, got to be patient. The reward is fantastic. It says the only level without a safety net is position 1. What do you think that means when we're talking about the levels and we say the only one without a safety net is position 1? Michelle's thinking. She's got the gears moving.
I know.
I'm going to jump over to, okay, YouTube looks like it's still babysitting good. Okay. What this means is, let's say I'm a leader and I'm at level 3, right? I'm productive. Everything's going great. Everything's wonderful. Some scandal comes up. I don't know. I cheat somebody on their time card. I wreck a company vehicle. I don't set the alarm in the shop. I mean, something comes up. You blunder. You make a big mistake. If you're a level 3 leader, they're probably not going to fire you. You have a safety net. You might get disciplined. You might lose some team members. You might get, restructured. You might have to work in a different division for a while, right? But you'll keep your job. You have a safety net because you've built these levels of reliability underneath you. What I mean is your sphere of influence becomes your safety net. Now, if you never graduate yourself off of the manager's level and something goes wrong, there's no safety net. You blew it, you're out, right? No second chances, no spin the wheel, no nothing. If you blow it, you're out of there, gone. So it's in your own best interest to take yourself up the leadership ladder. So if something goes wrong, this COVID crisis is a great example of this. People that stayed at lower positions at their companies are at risk of losing hours, losing dollars, taking pay cuts, all kinds of things. And people that have raised their bar of leadership, whether they're in a leadership position or not, if they have become a leader within their work group, they tend to have more stability, right? So when it comes time to make layoffs, comes time to make decisions, comes time to hire people back after the COVID crisis, it's the people that had the higher levels of leadership exhibited that will get the first draw at coming back and getting, financially feasible again. So those are all things to keep in mind. You're moving things further and further along, right? It says here, number 6, it says, the higher you go, the greater the return. Well, I've already kind of described that, right? It says the better leaders are in an organization, the better, it says the better the leaders are in an organization, the better everyone in the organization becomes. When productivity is high, chemistry is good, morale is high, and momentum is strong, the payoffs increase, right? I think about that. I can think so many times when I've taken over an automotive repair center, and I'll go in, the company will be in the red, they're losing money, they can't keep up with payroll, they're behind on paying their parts bill. There's all kinds of things that are happening from a fixed operations perspective. And then usually it takes 3, 6, 9 months, I kind of do things in stages, but like within the first 3 months, you're going to see the morale in the shop change. The shop's going to become cleaner. The parts inventory is going to be leveled out. And then you start to see the margins come up. By the 6th month, we start making a little bit more money. The margins are getting pretty good. The technicians are getting pretty happy. The shop is clean. The outside looks good. The customers are happier. And by the time we get to 9 months, the shop is singing along on its own. And I've already started to groom leaders to fill my position, right? And what happens then is parts is on autopilot. The margins are high. Customers are happy and they're spending more money than they were before. The technicians are happy. The workplace is clean. These are all things that happen when you have a good leader position, right? It says the better the leaders are in an organization, the better everyone in the organization becomes. That is 100% true. A really good leader, and if you think about some of the things we covered in leadership and some of the things in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership in that book, if you get to a point in your leadership where everything's singing great, let's say you got a team of 10 people and 8 of them are fantastic and productivity's high, morale is high. Think about that. Everyone in the organization becomes better, right? But you got 2 people that don't. Is that a problem with your leadership or is that a problem with those people? And then that becomes the math that you have to figure out being the leader. Are these 2 people that need to be replaced? Are these 2 people that need to be developed, right? Remember over here where we said the higher you go, the more time and commitment is required to win at a level, right? So is this a situation where a little more time and commitment on your part develops those 2 people? Do you need to make a training commitment with a third party? Or do you need to clean house and bring in more positive people that you can develop and build that team with? And only you have those answers. So, but those are things to think about, okay? Number 7 in this category says, moving farther up always requires further growth. That you will never hear an argument from me on that one. If you saw the stack of books next to where I'm sitting right now and saw what I am reading for light reading, you'd freak out. Growing as a leader is something that never stops, right? In John's words here, it says, growing as a leader requires a combination of intentional growth and leadership experience. That's huge. It says, if people rely only on experience without intentionally learning and preparing for the next level, they won't progress as leaders. If you think that going to your job as a boss, the manager, the owner, whatever, if you think that day-to-day experience at that level of leadership is developing you, you're misinformed. You have given yourself too much credit. A good leader, leads in their daily life and takes those leadership opportunities to exercise influence. And that's 100% what you should be doing. But you also need to leverage outside sources of information, whether that is, attending workshops, going to, training workshops, jumping on lynda.com and picking up some, reading another Maxwell book. And, Maxwell's not the only author. So if you want to read about sales, Grant Cardone's good at that. Tony Robbins, Dean Grazioni. I mean, there's all these people out there that have content. And the more you saturate yourself with that level of content, the more natural it's going to be for you to build and grow yourself as a leader through these 5 levels of leadership. Number 8 says, not climbing the levels limits you and your people, right? Think about that. When I go into a shop and I'm doing a needs assessment at a repair center, I don't just think about how much money I'm going to make as the coach. And I don't just think about how much money the store owner is going to make if I help him fix his store. That's part of it. I'm going to get paid as a coach, and I'm going to make that store owner more money. That's all part of it. But the part that hits my heart, the reason why I think that I'm good at what I do with fixed operations is because the part that's hitting my heart is I look around that shop and I go, okay, there's 5 people here. That's 5 families. That's 5 families that I'm going to positively influence through my leadership. That's 5 families that I'm going to help have a better Christmas this year. That's 5 families that I'm going to get a trip to Disney because they're all Michelle's friends and they want to go to Disney. But, you know, it's when you can personalize, you know, your consulting or your management or your leadership role, when you can personalize it to the idea that it's not just, it's not for me. I mean, it is, I'm going to get paid. Don't get me wrong. I don't do this stuff for free. I'm going to get paid. The store owner that I'm helping, he's going to make more money, right? That's the reason he's paying me, is because he's going to make more money. But that's not enough. If that was the only reason to do the stuff that I do, I wouldn't be the same person that I am. The reason that I'm the person I am is because I've taken the time, and it's taken me a while to figure this out. But every time I help one of these businesses become more financially stable, I help stabilize each of the families related to that business, right? I'm talking about just the service department. I'll go up into the parts department. There's 3 more families there. I go into the sales department. There's 6 more families there. If I can help that whole business, and on average, with the training I give in the power sports level, on average, these shops go up 47% in parts and labor sales. So if they were, you know, $1 million revenue company before I got there, they're going to do $1,470,000 in revenue the next year. Law of averages. So based on that law of averages, that extra $500,000 is going to do a better job of taking care of those 15 families, right? And that's where I'm coming from with having these levels of leadership and how they affect you, right? So not climbing the levels, well, it limits you and your people. If you continue to exist at a lower level of leadership, you are not only ripping yourself off, but you have to think of it like you're ripping off the other people around you that would benefit from you raising your level of leadership, right? Number 9 says when you change positions or organizations, you seldom stay at the same level. It's what we talked about earlier, the example of going from Apple to Google, right? You may be at this level of leadership and you may feel awfully comfortable up here, but when you think of making a decision or changing, or maybe the CEO changes, right? Let's say that you're high enough up in a big company where the CEO goes out and a new CEO comes in. You might not necessarily stay at that level of leadership because that new CEO may change policies and processes that cause you to come back down and work yourself back up. Remember, the more you do it, the easier it is. So it's not always the end of the world when that happens. Sometimes it can be a great opportunity. I always say that when there's great change, there's great opportunity. Whenever there's this COVID crisis is a great example. Yeah. As soon as the COVID crisis broke out and they started shutting down businesses, I thought, paradigm shift, opportunity. Anytime there's obstacles, there's opportunity, right? So now I have to figure out where's the opportunity and then pursue that. There's a quote in here. It says, level 10, it says in section 10 here, it says, you cannot climb the levels alone. And that's something that I hit on earlier. It says you can't climb things alone. And there was a Quaker leader, C.W. Perry, that had said, and he's quoted here in the John book, says, leadership is accepting people where they are, then taking them somewhere, right? And I think that's really, really cool. It's, if I'm leading a team, anyone that's assigned to me as part of that team, they're not beneath me at all. I can't look down on them and think they're not worthy to be led. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so, you know, as this Quaker points out, he says, leadership is accepting people where they are, right? And I've said that a lot. I've always said things like, you know, if you're going to survive in sales, you got to meet people where they are, right? But it says leadership is accepting people where they are and then taking them somewhere, right? And it says that's what the 5 levels of leadership is all about. Let's see. That's going to take us to the leadership assessment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think we're going to put some of this leadership assessment stuff in notes into an assignment in the Mañana No Más Academy. And so we'll have that pop up. There'll be a link I'll send out in an email, and there'll be a link I'll put on these social channels and here in the YouTube description. But this assessment is going to be pretty cool. Now, I'm not going to plagiarize the book, and I'm not assessment word for word, but I think it would be really cool, and not necessarily make it so that I know where everybody's at. The last book I did with John Maxwell, the videos were getting 400 and 500 plays, right? So I obviously don't have the time to go through 400 or 500 submissions, right, for your assessment. But I think it's really valuable to you to do the assessment, go through the exercise, and really take root of where you're at, right? It says how to gauge your current level of leadership. And like I said, a lot of people have this weird thing where they assume they're down here. And a lot of times they're right here. A lot of times they've already built enough relationship and enough influence with a group that they're already at a level of leadership they don't even recognize themselves, right? And that'll happen a lot. And again, there's some people that think they've got it sewn up. They don't even know why they're listening to me talk right now because they think they've got all the answers. Well, those people might take the assessment and realize they've got some work to do. They've got some growth that's going to be required for them to get up and figure out their next move with leadership. So next session will be next Tuesday, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, right? We're going to do this on a weekly basis, and we'll go through the leadership assessment. Again, I'll put a link up in the social channel so people will know where to go. You guys can do the assessment. And then next session, so next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we'll do a quick review. We'll talk about the assessment. We'll address any questions that people will have. The fun team does miss you.
Yeah.
And then we'll start breaking into, the upside of position, right? We talked about positional authority earlier as if it was like the lowest level of leadership, like it was something to be avoided, like it was something that was bad. It's not bad. There's a lot of pluses to being in a positional form of authority, right? So we're going to talk about the positives of positional authority. We're going to talk about some of the obstacles or caveats of positional authority, and then that'll take us through that whole first level of leadership, and we'll cover all that next Tuesday at 3. So next Tuesday at 3, for people that sign in, we'll go over the assessments, what some of the assessments might be telling us. We'll review what the 5 levels are, and then we'll dive into the advantages and disadvantages of positional authority. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, Michelle's shaking her head yes. Let's go over to, okay, looks like YouTube is still pumping along. Good, good, good. All right. And then just as a, just kind of as a follow-up, I want to make sure that I share with people, this is going to be recorded, and then it's going to be added to the Mañana No Más Academy as a course. So we already have a leadership course on the Mañana No Más Academy, and then we'll have a, the 5 levels of leadership course. And it's really just meant to get people through the material quickly and efficiently. And that wraps it up. So thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out. And to see the replay, that'll be done probably the next day or two, and that'll be up on mañananomas.com in the Academy. And we'll go from there. I will see you next Tuesday. And you're very welcome, Michelle. Have yourself an awesome day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.